to quickly go through the lesson for tomorrow, and I just wanted to cover really some of the safety aspects of cooking, casting, and handling sugar. I know you guys saw a short demo of me, putting that piece together, and we will be doing that tomorrow. But I just wanted to cover some of these elements, which will save us time, right? We've got a fair bit to do. So we're on this unit called Model Sugar-Based Decoration. Just that image there is the sugar piece and the chocolate piece from the 2013 Australian team competing in the Coupe du Monde. So there was just some information on boiling sugar. So in this unit, we need to boil, cook sugar, cast sugar, pull sugar, and blow sugar. And of course, we've got pastelage, which makes up the volume. So and the sugar piece is a very controlled thing for us for this unit. We've got short amount of time. And so the height, the dimensions, and the style, we'll keep a pretty tight control on that. Probably one of the most critical parts about cooking sugar is the temperature. Right, there's a few elements: keeping clean, keeping the pot clean, keeping everything clean from grease or fat or other impurities or inclusions, right? So yes, we need to select sugar. We're using isomalt or isomalt. It must be clean and free from contaminants. If we were cooking sugar, we would use A1 sugar, which is a larger caliber of sugar, or cube sugar is also quite useful. If you've ever had sugar cubes in the box, there's less dust, right? So the dust is a problem. We'll be keeping an eye out for impurities. They are problematic. Crystallized sugar is boiled, the sugars dissolve, then form a saturated sugar solution. The sucrose crystals change with continuous boiling and form two molecules of simple sugar called dextrose. And when combining with other simple sugars, that's what forms this clear glass-like effect of cast sugar. They sometimes use inverted sugar or an acid in that boiling process. Cream of tartar or citric acid, some sort of acid in there also, and that's usually added for when we want to manipulate the sugar for pulled sugar, blown sugar, and those sort of, that sort of part of the sugar process. These are the stages of cooked sugar. Now, this is a little bit different for isomalt, and the temperatures that we get will reflect that. So you have one sort of set of rules for cooking cane sugar, and then we've got another set of rules for isomalt. Isomalt is definitely easier. It's what the professionals use for sugar craft. And that's why we are using that. It's a lot more expensive, right? It's a very expensive ingredient, and we need to respect that, look after the sugar that we have, and that's why for this first lesson, we will be recooking sugar from the last class, which is nearly 2 years ago, right? But that sugar is still good for us to cast our practice piece. So essentially, we'll be doing two pieces. We're doing one just to practice putting that together, and then of course we'll do a clean piece that will present for the assessment. So this is just a guide for cooking cane sugar. And you've got these thread, soft ball, firm ball, hard ball, small crack, and then hard crack, and of course then caramel, which we all know. And of course these have specific temperatures that you can navigate to for that. I'm just now going to share another one just on the safety of sugar. Let's make sure I pick the right one. All right. So this image here is of the sugar piece that we'll be making. pretty much not exactly that, but certainly the shape. And you can see that the elements on that piece, you got some blown sugar, some pulled sugar, ribbon down the bottom there. On the base where those spheres are, that's blown sugar, okay? And then we've got the cast sugar, and we've got just a few petit fours on show for that piece. So just on work health and safety, okay, we really need to be really aware of each other when we're moving hot sugar around the class. So we'll be in K5, the kitchen 5, the patisserie kitchen, and just want to make sure that you're partnering up with somebody and that you're both very aware of when that hot sugar is moving from the stove to the bench. I did show about having some oven mitts on the bench. Like we really work hard to make sure, and wearing gloves, we're wearing our full uniform, just taking care not to have any accidents. Okay, so I did mention accidents with sugar. They are normally serious things, right? Because sugar is very hot. So safety is always first when boiling sugar. Stay alert, avoid distractions. Keeping a bowl of ice water nearby is sometimes useful. I find this also problematic having another thing on the bench, like another water jug or a bowl. We might just use like a 2 litre jug that's half filled with just with a nice slurry. And the idea of that is that if you get hot sugar on your finger or you get stung, you can put it in that ice water. But it's sort of a little bit redundant because we are wearing gloves, right? So we shouldn't be in a position where we're using our bare hands without protection when we've got hot sugar. Always keep a clean pot. And we use the burners just one row, so we're not overloading that area. When you're cooking sugar, you stay with the sugar, right? So just stay with it until you reach the right temperature. It's really critical to make sure you hit the right temperature and that you're adding the colorants in at the right temperature. That is paramount, especially for pulled and blown sugar. Always keep the pot as far away from your face and chest as possible, right? Makes sense. So yeah, we just practice, I think just being super aware, okay? Planned tasks, yes, that's all been planned for you. The plan's there. We have some drawings that we need to supply for that. I've got the assessment document as well, so we can, from lesson 1, we can start planning for that assessment time. Managing the environment, so don't get overcrowded, don't cluster your workplace, right? Just only have the tools and utensils that you need for doing that task. Make sure your pathway is clear when you're coming from the stoves to your bench. To keep your eye out for slip hazards, and that's where the person that you're benching with, the person next to you, yeah, you've got to look out for each other. Don't do too many tasks, just focus on the one thing at the one time. Complete that and then reset for the next task. Full uniform, gloves, use the correct equipment that's all being supplied to you. And of course, again, gloves, carrying pots with gloves or oven mitts, and using an oven mitt on the bench to place the hot pot. So we're just really pretty much making sure there's no transfer of heat or sugar from anywhere other than from the pot to then casting it on a marble slab. Just more information about, cooking sugar. I'll cover it again, but you sort of get the vibe, right? We really want to stay safe. We don't want any accidents. Sugar burns, pretty serious when they happen. Boiling sugar can cause serious scarring and disfigurement. It's important to know that and know what to do if something occurs. I am the supervisor. It's my responsibility while you're in that room. If you do get burnt, cold, like tap water on there straight away, as soon as possible. Need to take the heat out of that burn. The thing with sugar, molten sugar, is that if it gets on the bare skin, if it doesn't hit some cold liquid, cold water, and so it can set, that it will continue to transfer heat into your skin. And like it says there, most burns occur on the surface of the skin, which consist of several layers. The severity of the burn can be classified according to how many layers of skin that you go through. Talking from experience, I have been seriously burnt, um, and it is very painful. It's a little bit scary. The one thing is stay calm. If anything happens, um, you know, the people around us, our team, you get that person to some cold water, put that burnt part, or the injured part under running tap water, and then from there we manage triage, whether we need to call an ambulance or whether it's something that we can manage in class. It's not something that happens. It does happen, but serious burns, I can't even remember the last time. So I think for us as a group, we're professionals. Just stay alert. Let's be diligent and let's get through these lessons without any problems. There is first degree, second degree, and third degree burns. I really don't want to don't want anybody to experience any of those. They are painful, and let's get through that. Ice water, I mentioned that. I'll have a setup that will all follow. I don't necessarily think that we will need that ice water, because we're wearing gloves and we've got chef's jackets. We've got all the things that we need. There shouldn't be a situation where it hits bare skin. And there's just an image and the steps to follow if you do get burnt. Just cooling that burn underwater. And then there's different, it used to be that we used ice. That's not recommended anymore, even though the ice does take the sting out and it's pretty satisfying, meaning that you're not in pain, but then it sort of comes back tenfold. So, and the ice also has ramifications for damaged skin. So, just running water is what is recommended now. We have the tools that we'll be using, copper pots. We will need to clean those with lemon and salt. So everything is super clean. I'll demonstrate that, of course. There is different cooking stages again for pulled and blown sugar. And again, because we're using Isomalt, we'll be using some professional data for that. And we'll follow those rules to cook our Isomalt for that showpiece. That's traditional cooked sugar. So you can see it's got sugar, glucose, and an acid, and water, of course. You first cook the sugar, then you add the glucose at 104 degrees. There's a reason for that. And the reason for that is that we want to fully dilute that sugar solution before we add the glucose. Otherwise, the glucose can, in fact, bond to one of the sugar crystals and it won't melt out. And then therefore we have this problem later on with crystals re-emerging in the cooked sugar. And then you've got a temperature then for adding colorants, and then a temperature then that we need to finish that sugar right. And when you do reach that final temperature, we don't plunge pots into water. We're taking that to that point, calmly going back to our bench, pouring that sugar onto a marble slab, cooling that immediately, and then we do a bit of manipulation, form a shape, and then we're going to go into a storage mode, or we cast it, of course. There's just more information I'm going to cover on the day. There's a fair bit of information here. Non-traditional Isomalt is made from sugar that has been exposed to an enzyme resulting in isomaltose, which is purified further during the crystallized process. Isomalt is a professional sugar for making sugar showpieces. It then has extra hydrogen atoms added to the molecule, which gives the Isomalt greater heat stability. So the interesting thing with Isomalt is it's got a really high browning point, like a real high temperature browning point. So it stays clear at very high temperatures, and that's why it's designed for sugar showpieces. This is particularly useful for the art of sugar work because it allows the Isomalt to have the following characteristics. It has a greater heat stability and a longer cooking life. It is more heat resistant, and two reactions with other chemicals and less prone to discoloration, right? So it has that really high, like caramelization point. Advantages of Isomalt: it can be melted straight from the bag over heat, and that's what we'll be doing it. It's less hygroscopic, so it doesn't cloud or go cloudy. It has less. It doesn't attract moisture as much as cane sugar. We will be using silica gel to keep them dry, but essentially we shouldn't, we're at a really good time of the year for doing sugar work, so we shouldn't need to do that. It can be remelted multiple times, and that's what we'll be doing, kicking off with, is we're using sugar that was cooked in the last sugar course. Yes, it will be just dark, but we really just need to practice pouring that and assembling a structure. And you get very clear sugar. It stays clear for longer, especially when using colorants, right? Disadvantages: the cost. You can see it there, and this is probably a little bit outdated even. So it's $2.60 for a kilo. A kilo of sugar, and Isomalt is nearly 50, but I think it's more than that now. Isomalt's very expensive. Isomalt's used in a lot of some confectionery, like sugar-free confectionery, because it's not as sweet as sugar. And it is really acts like sugar, apart from the caramelization, the flavor profile. It has some negative things about, like, and we had a look at the data sheet on Isomalt. There was some stuff in there. I don't know whether I'd really want to eat Isomalt, but it does have, it has a diuretic effect on the body, and it's not ideal to consume. It's something that you should consume a small amount. And like the sugar piece is not meant to be eaten. It's an artwork in sugar. This is the equipment that we'll be using per person, right? So you've got, and we need to document this too, right? Don't forget that you're taking photos of this setup, and you've got the list there of the equipment that we're using, and we need that for the skills assessment document. We'll be making that shape similar. I think we've got a bit more of a curve and a straight part at the top. I've got that already ready for us tomorrow. And we'll be casting sugar directly into that noodle shape. You can see there the different shapes that we're making for the base. So we've got, on the left, we've got the structure. In the middle is the sugar, in fact, for the blown and pulled sugar, which we'll be doing over the few weeks. So essentially, like, really concentrating on the base structure and the pastelage, lesson 1, then looking at blown sugar, lesson 2, or I think it's pulled sugar, I can't remember. And then the third lesson is one of those, either pulled or blown. And then the fourth lesson is where we're just pulling all that together to build a piece. That's the recipe for Isomalt for our sugar. So we've got the little bit of water, the kilo of Isomalt, and then the colorant. And then we've got, if you're doing really strong, deep colors, just the recipe's the same, other than it's got more colorant. I think the cooking might be a little bit different too. I know 165 for both. So that's the cooking point. So important not to move the cast pieces before they're fully cooled. They will disfigure. The pieces lose their shape and distort. They might get wrinkles on the top, and also try not to touch the top parts because they get fingerprints, right? We want to keep it as clean as we can, shiny, clean. So yeah, refrain from trying to touch them. Touch the sides and the bottom, but try not to touch the top. Okay, how to store sugar pieces. So we need to store it in a dry area, no bag over the top. If we do cover it totally, we need to use silica gel. We need some way of pulling out that moisture. We've got silica gel. We'll probably use that from lesson 2. If you're doing any practice, like an airtight container with silica gel, silicone paper underneath so it doesn't touch anything. We really want to try and just keep it out of the environment so it doesn't absorb moisture. Now, we're pretty dry at the moment. So I think like I said, it's a good time to do sugar, so we shouldn't have too much drama. Base structure, you can see it there. Got a black base, black cylinder, some discs, a dome, an arch. We're not using, see in the center there, it's got the cake disc. That's where we're putting our flower. So there's the only difference really from this piece to the one that we're doing is that we're going to put a flower or some object in the center there that really draws our eye to that. I showed this, and this is also on the team site. You can have a look at this PowerPoint, and that pretty much is the steps of cooking sugar. You can see it there. Got the base. You can also see the colorants for the pulled sugar in the middle, and then we've got the ribbon, and then there's the sugar on the far right for blowing sugar. And then, yeah, when we get to this part, we're using a blowtorch to heat just a point of the sugar to make it sticky, and then we start gluing that piece together. We normally have the heat lamp, and you can see it in the far right of that image where we keep just some sugar hot that we can then help that connection to make it strong. We don't want any situation where the sugar just collapses because it doesn't have enough strong connection. Really, think about it as two materials. We need to join those two materials together. There's just a group of images. Again, I think they're useful. You know, you can sort of see, you know, the steps needed to build a structure. And we're after something like that. So that ticks all the boxes, really. It's got the cast sugar, pulled sugar, blown sugar. The only difference too for us is that we're going to implement a lot more pastelage to give it more volume, right? So we can still tick off those elements, but we get a nice piece. Okay, I'll see you guys tomorrow. If you can, I hope you do watch this. So it'll save a fair bit of time for us. Bye.